Welcome to Learn English at Ease.
It's fantastic to be here with all of you.
Yeah, whether you are like folding your laundry, commuting on a really busy train, or just sitting back with a cup of coffee, we are here to help you master the English language.
Exactly. And while we do that, we're going to be exploring some um, really fascinating ideas about how we actually live our lives and spend our time.
Right. Our goal today is to give you a really natural, immersive English listening experience.
We have a highly engaging conversation lined up for you, packed with, well, advanced vocabulary, everyday idioms, and some deep psychological insights.
Insights that might just, completely change the way you structure your entire day.
But before we dive into all those details, we have a very small favor to ask you.
Just a tiny one. If you want to support us and keep improving your English every single week, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Yeah, it really helps our channel grow.
It totally does. Leave us a rating or a review, and maybe share this episode with a friend who is also on their English learning journey.
It ensures we can keep bringing you these deep discussions completely free of charge. We truly appreciate that support.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump straight into our topic. Picture this scenario, right? You have been working incredibly hard all day.
Oh, I know this feeling well.
Yeah, perhaps you've been staring at a glowing screen for 8 solid hours, answering demanding emails or studying for a major exam.
Your brain feels like a sponge that has been completely run out.
Exactly. So you finally walk into your living room, you drop your bag, sit down on the very edge of the couch, and you tell yourself out loud, I'm just going to take a quick 10-minute brain break.
Ah, the infamous 10-minute brain break. We all know how this story ends.
We really do. So you'd unlock your phone, you tap on a colorful app icon, maybe looking for a funny video just to decompress and let off some steam.
Oh, let's pause on that phrase really quickly for our learners.
Good idea.
To let off some steam means to release pent-up energy or stress.
Like a boiling pot of water, right?
Right, exactly. So you watch one video, you laugh, it feels great, your brain gets a tiny hit of dopamine.
And then you swipe up to the next one.
Yeah, and you tell yourself, okay, just one more minute.
But it's never just one more minute, is it?
Never. And then, almost as if your consciousness was temporarily suspended, you suddenly realize the physical environment around you has shifted.
The lighting in the room is different.
Yeah. The sun is completely set. You look up at the clock on the wall, and an hour and 15 minutes have just vanished into a black hole of endless scrolling.
It's terrifying how fast it happens. The lost time is astonishing. But let's examine the physiological and emotional state you were left in after that hour and 15 minutes.
It's not good.
No, it isn't. You don't feel refreshed. You don't feel like someone who just took a restorative break. You typically feel, well, kind of hollow.
Yeah, you are draped in this heavy, suffocating layer of guilt. Exactly. And somehow, contrary to all biological logic, you actually feel significantly more tired than when you first sat down on that couch.
It makes no sense.
Neurologically speaking, it actually does. That hour didn't just disappear. Your brain was actively burning more glucose processing those rapid-fire videos than if you had been doing deep, focused work.
Wow, that is the ultimate paradox. The attempt to rest actually depleted your cognitive reserves even further.
Right. And that highly relatable, slightly painful scenario is the foundation of our entire conversation today.
We're completely reframing how we view our daily schedules, right?
Yes, we are looking at mastering time management to avoid that creeping existential dread of wasting your life.
But to be clear, we aren't talking about becoming some robotic, hyper-optimized productivity machine that schedules every single second of the day.
Oh, absolutely not. Chasing that kind of hyper-optimization usually leads straight to systemic burnout.
Right, because the human nervous system simply isn't designed to operate like a factory assembly line.
Exactly. Which is why our focus is entirely on learning new skills, personal growth, and moving completely away from overwhelming, massive goals that basically just paralyze us.
Instead, we are exploring the profound, compounding power of micro investments of our time.
So if you are listening to this right now and you have ever fallen victim to the hour-long scroll when you merely intended to check a single text message, you are in the right place.
Definitely. By the end of this conversation, you will have a completely new, incredibly practical toolkit for capturing that lost time without burning yourself out.
To initiate that shift in perspective, though, we must first define our terms.
What do you mean?
Well, we need to dissect what we actually mean when we utter the phrase wasting time.
Oh, right. We throw that phrase around constantly.
Yeah, usually as a verbal weapon to punish ourselves. But on a functional behavioral level, what does it actually signify?
You know, I've always noticed that people tend to confuse relaxing with wasting time. They lump them into the same category.
They really do.
But wasting time isn't about experiencing joy or chilling out. A better definition is utilizing your time for activities that are neither intrinsically important nor helpful to your long-term well-being.
Exactly. It is the complete absence of utility.
Right.
The distinction between intentional rest and wasted time is critical. We are not dealing with a simple binary where you are either working hard or wasting time.
So what's the metric then?
The true metric is utility and importance to your own physiological and psychological growth. To visualize this concept, consider a very specific, tangible metaphor.
Okay, I love a good metaphor.
Imagine your daily allotment of time as a finite, measurable amount of fresh water contained within a glass bottle.
Oh, that's good. Let's build on that visual. The bottle represents the 24 hours I receive every single morning.
Right.
And I have total autonomy over where that water goes.
You do. You can pour that water into a glass and drink it to hydrate yourself. In our metaphor, this represents using your time to learn a new language, to advance your career, or to engage in rigorous self-improvement.
So it has direct, undeniable utility.
Exactly. Alternatively, you can use that water to carefully nourish a houseplant.
Okay, and what does the houseplant represent?
This represents investing your time in your relationships, nurturing your friendships, or dedicating hours to a beloved hobby.
I see.
You could even use that water to brew a warm, calming cup of chamomile tea, which symbolizes genuine, deliberate, restorative rest.
All of those actions are valid, constructive applications of the water.
Yes. Wasting time, however, is functionally equivalent to unscrewing the cap of the bottle, tilting it over, and pouring the water directly onto the floorboards.
Oh, wow. Yeah, once that water hits the floor, the laws of physics dictate that it is gone.
It soaks into the wood. It evaporates.
And you cannot scoop it back up into the bottle, right?
Yeah.
You cannot drink it tomorrow. It's permanently lost.
Exactly.
For our English learners, we often use the idiom money down the drain to describe wasting cash. But here, it is literally time down the drain.
That's a perfect phrase for it. It is an irreversible thermodynamic loss of energy.
Yeah.
And there is a secondary metaphor that captures the emotional texture of this experience, too.
What's that?
When time slips away mindlessly, you aren't usually making a conscious, aggressive decision to throw it away. It feels much more passive.
Passive.
Yeah, it feels like holding a handful of very fine, dry beach sand. You don't throw the sand, you simply relax the tension in your hand.
Oh, I can picture that.
You open your fingers just a fraction of an inch, perhaps without even registering the movement, and you passively observe the sand falling through the gaps.
So you aren't committing a malicious act against yourself, but you are allowing a deeply valuable, non-renewable resource to vanish through sheer inattention.
Precisely.
Wait, hold on. Let's test that theory against a real-world scenario.
Yeah.
Let's say I am sitting on my couch and I am watching a compilation video of dogs doing ridiculous, clumsy things.
Okay.
I'm laughing out loud. I'm genuinely enjoying the visual stimulus. If I find immense pleasure in funny animal videos, why is that automatically categorized as pouring water on the floor or letting sand slip through my fingers?
It isn't necessarily.
Where is the objective boundary between experiencing joy and wasting time?
That is the crux of the issue, and it is where the neuroscience of human behavior provides some much-needed clarity.
Okay, lay it on me.
The boundary line between genuine restorative fun and wasted time is almost never determined by the nature of the activity itself.
So watching dog videos is not inherently toxic or wasteful.
No, not at all. The ultimate differentiator is the neurochemical and emotional state you experience the exact second the activity ceases.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the definitive biomarker of wasted time is the presence of regret.
Ah, that dreaded hollow feeling in the pit of your stomach where you ask yourself, why did I just do that?
Precisely. Let's contrast two different mindsets approaching the exact same activity.
Okay.
Mindset one, you finish a grueling workday. You consciously declare to yourself, I am exhausted. I love animal humor. I'm going to sit in this chair for exactly 20 minutes and immerse myself in funny videos because it brings me immediate joy.
That sounds like a great plan.
It is. 20 minutes later, you lock your phone. You feel lighter. Your cortisol levels, the stress hormone have measurably decreased. You feel happier.
So that was not wasted time.
Right. That was a highly intentional, restorative psychological break.
Okay, so what's mindset two?
Mindset two. You are actively avoiding a difficult task, perhaps a blank document you need to write. You stumble into the app out of anxiety.
Ugh, I do that all the time.
You sit there completely dissociated, essentially letting the algorithm dictate your attention. When you finally break the trance an hour later, you feel that heavy, hollow regret.
That is the indicator. So the core pathology is a complete and total lack of intentionality.
Exactly.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic vocabulary word for our listeners to master.
Yes, it is.
For everyone listening, intentionality means doing things on purpose, with deliberate thought, rather than acting by accident or reflex. It is moving from a state of passivity to a state of agency.
It's the difference between driving the car and being asleep in the passenger seat.
Right. But if a lack of intention is the root of the problem, if wandering aimlessly into an hour of scrolling is what destroys our peace of mind, how do we practically fix it?
Well,
Because telling someone you just need to be highly intentional with every single minute of your waking life, that sounds completely exhausting. It sounds like a fast track to the exact burnout we are desperately trying to avoid.
oh, absolutely. Attempting to micromanage every second of human existence is a recipe for cognitive collapse.
Right.
Our brains will actively rebel against that level of stricture. We don't want to enforce draconian discipline. We want to overcome the paralysis that occurs when we try to manage too much simultaneously.
So what's the fix?
The psychological antidote to this overwhelming paralysis is a framework we call the tiny plan.
The tiny plan. I am fascinated by the mechanics of this concept. Usually when we have that moment of terrible realization, when we see we've poured our water on the floor, we panic.
We do. We experience a surge of guilt.
And we swing the pendulum violently in the opposite direction, right?
Yeah.
We set massive, intimidating, incredibly vague goals.
The classic overcorrection.
Yeah, we make grand declarations. That's it. Starting Monday, I will radically overhaul my entire life. I will become completely fluent in French. I will master Python coding. I will read a book a week.
Right. And consider the immediate neurological response when you set a sweeping, unstructured goal like, I will drastically improve my language skills today.
To completely freeze.
Yes. The ambition is there, but the execution hits a brick wall.
The goal is too immense and too nebulous. Where do you even begin? Do you buy a textbook? Do you download an app? Do you hire a tutor?
Exactly. You end up spending 45 minutes just researching the optimal way to start.
And then you get overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the mountain you have decided to climb. And you inevitably retreat back to the safety of the couch and the dog videos.
Because the couch doesn't demand anything from you.
Exactly. For our learners, we call this biting off more than you can chew, taking on a task that is simply too big to handle.
That's a perfect idiom for this. And the underlying neurology of that freeze response is spectacular, really. The human brain, specifically the amygdala, actively perceives massive, ambiguous tasks as a literal threat to survival.
Wait, really? A threat to survival?
Yes. In our evolutionary past, ambiguity meant danger. It meant a massive, unpredictable expenditure of caloric energy with an uncertain outcome.
Oh, that makes sense.
So when you give your brain a vague command, like learn a language, the brain's executive function, the part that plans and executes tasks, simply hits the brakes. It triggers a mild stress response.
Wow. So the tiny plan is a psychological workaround.
Exactly. It bypasses the amygdala's threat detection entirely because a tiny plan is hyperspecific and microscopically small.
To make this abstract concept deeply concrete, let's look at how we navigate physical space. Think about the navigation software or GPS in your car.
Okay.
If you jump into the driver's seat, start the ignition, put the car in drive, but you refuse to input a specific destination into the computer, what happens?
Well, your vehicle is capable of traveling thousands of miles, but without a vector, you will likely just drive in erratic circles.
Exactly. You might navigate through different neighborhoods, burn a significant amount of fuel, and cause wear and tear on your engine, but you aren't actually progressing toward any meaningful location.
You are generating motion without generating progress.
It is the definition of being busy without being productive.
Right.
But consider the alternative. You punch a highly specific, granular address into that GPS system, 123 Main Street, Suite 400.
Suddenly, the ambiguity is destroyed.
Yeah, the software calculates the exact route. It says, proceed for 2 miles, take the next left, your destination is approaching.
A tiny plan operates as the exact address punched into your cognitive GPS.
Right. Instead of the terrifyingly vague goal of I will learn a new language today, the tiny plan is I will sit at this specific desk and learn exactly 3 new verbs today.
Or I will put in my headphones and listen to precisely 10 minutes of an audio dialogue.
That's brilliant. It fundamentally rewires the relationship you have with your own ambition.
Let's analyze a comparative case study regarding language acquisition to really drive this home.
Okay, let's do it.
Approach A represents the classic ambition trap, driven by initial motivation but lacking systemic structure. A hypothetical student promises themselves they will study English vocabulary for 1 uninterrupted hour every single day after work.
We have all fallen into that trap. It's a fleeting burst of New Year's resolution energy, you know.
Yeah.
You feel invincible on January 1st.
You really do. So day 1 arrives, and they execute the plan. They study for 60 minutes. It requires immense willpower, but they push through the friction.
Okay, but what about day 2?
Day 2, the initial motivation is waning. They manage 45 minutes before their focus splinters.
And day 3?
By day 3, they return from a stressful day at the office. The mere thought of sitting down for a solid hour feels like a physical weight pressing on their chest.
Oh, I can feel that weight just thinking about it.
The task feels insurmountable, so they negotiate with themselves and skip the session.
And by day 5?
By day 5, the entire project is abandoned. Not only have they stopped learning, but they now carry the toxic psychological baggage of feeling like a failure.
Ugh, that's the worst part.
Approach A inevitably leads to decision fatigue, skip days, and the erosion of self-efficacy.
It is a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of doom.
It is. But let's look at approach B.
Okay, what does this student do differently?
This second student makes a radically different psychological contract with themselves. They promise to engage with the target language for just 10 minutes a day.
Just 10 minutes.
That is the entirety of their tiny plan. No more, no less.
The shift in cognitive load here is profound. When the daily requirement is capped at 10 minutes, you drastically lower the barrier to entry.
Exactly. On a Thursday evening when you are physically and mentally depleted, a 10-minute commitment does not trigger the amygdala's fight-or-flight resistance.
Your internal monologue shifts. You think, I am exhausted, my eyes hurt, but it is literally only 10 minutes. I can survive anything for 10 minutes.
You are essentially sneaking past the guard at the door of your own mind.
You are tricking your brain's natural inclination toward energy conservation.
You are completely neutralizing the brain's innate resistance to effort. Because the barrier is laughably low, you ensure the single most important metric in any learning endeavor: consistency.
Right, because the daily repetition of small acts is the actual biological engine that builds neural pathways.
Not sporadic, agonizing bursts of intense effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Furthermore, because the plan is hyper-specific, for instance, I will review my flashcards while drinking my morning coffee.
Right.
You completely eliminate the cognitive burn of decision fatigue.
You don't waste precious mental energy deciding what to do or where to start.
The address is already in the GPS. You just hit the accelerator.
That decision fatigue is a silent killer of productivity. If you don't know what specific video to watch or what chapter to read, you can waste 20 minutes just browsing the table of contents.
But with the tiny plan, the friction is gone.
Yeah.
And, there's a secret psychological bonus to the tiny plan.
Oh, what's that?
Once you get over that initial 60 seconds of resistance, physics takes over. An object in motion stays in motion. You plan for 10 minutes, but you enter a flow state. And you often end up studying for 20 or 30 minutes without realizing it.
That happens so often.
Right. But even if you stop precisely at the 10-minute mark, the session is categorized by your brain as a total success. You generate a feeling of pride instead of a feeling of guilt.
And the steady accumulation of that pride, those small daily micro-victories, begins to structurally rewire your self-identity.
I love that.
You slowly shed the self-image of a person who constantly wastes time and fails at their goals, and you begin to construct the identity of a person who consistently executes their plans. You become someone who keeps promises to themselves.
I see the logic, and the psychology is completely sound. We have defined the core problem, unintentional time wasting, and we have established a mechanism to solve it, the highly specific tiny plan.
Right.
But let's apply this to the messy reality of modern life. This is where I think a lot of our listeners will hit a wall.
Okay, where's the wall?
Where do we physically find the time in a chaotic, unpredictable schedule to execute this tiny plan?
That's a fair question.
Many people listening to us right now are juggling demanding corporate jobs, raising young children, enduring 2-hour daily commutes, and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life.
It's a lot.
For someone whose day is back-to-back chaos, the idea of carving out even 10 dedicated, uninterrupted minutes of silence can feel entirely impossible.
Well, that feeling of impossibility stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of how time exists in our daily lives.
How so?
To solve this, we must introduce one of the most powerful paradigms in cognitive time management, the hidden wealth of pocket time.
Pocket time. It is such an evocative phrase.
The flaw in our modern industrial thinking is that we assume time only holds actionable value if it exists in massive, unbroken 1-hour blocks.
We think, if I don't have an hour, I don't have time.
Exactly. But time is not a monolith. It exists in fragmented, scattered slivers throughout the entirety of our waking day.
For our learners, think of the pockets in your jeans where you keep small items. To grasp the magnitude of this concept, we need to employ the financial metaphor of currency.
Yes, imagine your time as physical money. Visualize your daily allocation of time as a pocket full of heavy metal coins.
Okay, I've got my pocket full of coins.
In an average day, you might be lucky enough to possess 1 or 2 big coins.
What are those?
These represent your rare 1-hour blocks of completely free, unstructured time. Perhaps you capture an hour in the late evening after the children are finally asleep, or you find a quiet hour on a lazy Sunday morning.
Right. And historically, we have been trained to map all of our ambitions and goals exclusively onto these big coins.
But if we examine the reality of our schedules, we possess a massive hidden surplus of small coins constantly rattling around in our day.
These are the random 3, 5, or 7-minute blocks of time that we don't schedule.
Yeah.
They just sort of happen to us in the margins of our responsibilities.
Exactly. And what is the default human behavior regarding these small coins?
What is it?
We systematically throw them directly in the metaphorical trash.
Oh, wow. By instantly pulling out our smartphones and mindlessly swiping through content the second we face a moment of inactivity.
Exactly that. You arrive at the bus stops, and the digital display says the bus is 5 minutes away. That is a 5-minute coin.
And what do?
You pull out your phone, open a social media feed, and throw that coin into the algorithmic garbage.
Ouch. That hurts because it's so true.
You are standing in your kitchen waiting for a pot of water to boil for pasta. That is a 4-minute coin. You toss it away.
You arrive at a meeting 3 minutes before anyone else. You throw that coin out the window.
But If you fundamentally shift your behavior, if you cease discarding these small increments and begin aggressively harvesting them to fund your tiny plans, you leverage the mathematical law of compounding.
You can essentially buy massive intellectual growth over a long time horizon.
Precisely.
Let's bring this down to the ground level and make it incredibly practical for our language learners. How do we spend these small coins effectively?
Give me an example.
Say your tiny plan is to improve your English vocabulary. You do not need a mahogany desk, a quiet library, and a stack of leather-bound textbooks.
No, you don't.
You can pull up a flashcard app on your phone and review 3 new idioms while you're standing on the damp sidewalk waiting for that bus.
That is a 3-minute coin, perfectly invested with high yield.
Right. You can put on one earbud and listen to 5 minutes of an English pronunciation podcast while you are standing at the kitchen sink washing greasy dishes.
Your hands are occupied, but your auditory processing center is entirely free. A 5-minute coin, successfully captured and deposited into your cognitive bank account.
You can read exactly 5 lines of a news article in English while you are standing in line at the cafe, waiting for the barista to hand you your cappuccino.
A 2-minute coin, utilized for language acquisition rather than mindless distraction.
There is a brilliant case study that grounds this theoretical concept in harsh reality.
Let's hear it.
Let's analyze the story of a working mother who wanted to learn a new language. Her demographic profile is one of extreme time poverty.
Time poverty, that's a good phrase.
Yeah. She was raising 2 young children, managing a household, and working a full-time, highly demanding corporate job. When she conducted an audit of her weekly schedule, she discovered a depressing reality. She literally never experienced a full, uninterrupted hour to herself.
The big coins simply did not exist in her ecosystem.
Exactly. For the vast majority of the population, that realization dictates the end of the ambition.
They look at the audit and conclude, well, the data is clear. I do not possess a 1-hour block of time. Therefore, it is mathematically impossible for me to learn this complex skill right now.
I will have to defer my dreams until my life miraculously calms down.
Which realistically is a day that never arrives.
Life rarely calms down. It just changes shape.
Yeah.
But this woman adopted a completely different strategy.
What did she do?
She accepted the absence of big coins, but she realized she was secretly wealthy in pocket time. She became ruthless about harvesting her small coins.
Okay.
She mapped out her day and found she had exactly 5 minutes every morning walking from her front door to the transit station. She identified 10 minutes of quiet time sitting alone at her desk during her lunch hour before the afternoon meetings commenced.
That's 15 minutes total.
And she claimed 7 minutes every night in the bathroom between brushing your teeth and turning off the bedside lamp.
Let's do the arithmetic. 5 minutes plus 10 minutes plus 7 minutes. That equals 22 minutes a day of highly focused, highly intentional learning.
All occurring entirely within the invisible cracks of an impossibly demanding schedule.
And the tangible result.
Within just 6 months of consistently harvesting these fractured minutes, her fluency in the target language skyrocketed. She accomplished a massive, complex intellectual task, and it was entirely funded by the loose change of pocket time.
That's incredible.
For our learners, loose change refers to the small coins you carry in your pocket. I love to think about this using a very specific analogy. Imagine the physical act of finding loose change slipping between the cushions of your living room couch.
Oh, the couch cushion analogy perfectly illustrates the psychology of temporal discounting. Go on.
If you were cleaning your house today and you pull a single quarter out from under the couch cushion, you don't jump for joy.
No, a quarter is functionally worthless in isolation. It cannot buy you a meal. It cannot change your life.
Your brain categorizes it as insignificant. It feels worthless in the moment. But let's run a thought experiment. Imagine you find a quarter in the couch on Monday. On Tuesday, you find a dime on the sidewalk. On Wednesday, you find 50 cents buried in the pocket of a heavy winter coat.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Now imagine you rigorously collect this seemingly worthless loose change every single day for 365 days, and you drop it into a large glass jar on your kitchen counter.
Okay.
At the end of the calendar year, you unscrew the lid and pour that jar out onto the table. Suddenly, you realize you have accumulated hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
You literally possess enough capital to fund a weekend vacation,
Yeah.
entirely paid for by small increments that felt mathematically irrelevant in the moment they were collected.
That jar of coins is exactly what pocket time does for human neuroplasticity.
That analogy cuts straight to the heart of why we fail at time management. We suffer from an evolutionary bias where we drastically underestimate the mathematical reality of the compounding effect.
We really do. We are wired to focus on massive, immediate gains.
Utilizing 5 minutes here and there doesn't feel like a massive sacrifice. It doesn't feel like you are engaging in rigorous academic study. It feels too easy.
But the mathematics of compounding do not care about your feelings.
Exactly. 20 minutes of harvested pocket time a day translates to roughly 120 hours over the course of a year.
Wow, 120 hours.
Yes, you can achieve conversational fluency in a language, master the basics of a programming language, or read a dozen dense books in 120 hours. The small coins aggregate into an intellectual fortune.
It is staggering when you shift your perspective to that macro level. The micro investments build empires.
They do.
But, I have to challenge this framework.
Yeah.
Let's look at the dark side of this equation.
Uh-oh, what is it?
Even if we successfully define our tiny plan, and even if we become absolute masters at scanning our environment and capturing every single minute of our pocket time, if the actual task we are forcing ourselves to do during those 5 minutes is dry, boring, and absolutely miserable, human nature dictates that we are still going to quit by Wednesday.
You are identifying the primary failure point of all productivity systems right there.
Right.
Human beings possess remarkable resilience, but our neurobiology is fundamentally wired to avoid sustained, unrewarded discomfort. If an activity is purely painful, the brain will eventually mount a successful rebellion.
Right. So the critical question becomes, how do we engineer the experience so that we actually want to spend our pocket time on the tiny plan?
How do we stop ourselves from experiencing a sense of dread when we have 5 free minutes?
Exactly. This introduces a vital concept, joy as a retention strategy.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
The core thesis here is a stark warning against traditional educational models. Personal growth and learning should absolutely not feel like a punitive measure.
If the act of studying feels incredibly heavy, deeply serious, and constantly stressful, your brain will eventually flip the circuit breaker and say, I'm out.
Yes. In the realm of language acquisition, there is a concept known as the effective filter hypothesis.
Ah, Stephen Krashen's theory.
Yes, it posits that emotional variables like anxiety, stress, and fear act as a literal barrier, a filter that prevents comprehensible input from reaching the language acquisition center of the brain.
When an activity is constantly paired with a feeling of inadequacy or academic stress, the adrenal glands pump cortisol into the bloodstream.
Over time, your brain constructs thick neural pathways that associate the target language with psychological pain.
And what is the brain's primary directive when it encounters a source of pain?
It seeks an escape route.
It immediately seeks a low-friction escape route.
And what is the most accessible, low-friction escape route in the modern world?
The glowing rectangle in your pocket, mindless, algorithmic scrolling, the very time-wasting behavior we are attempting to eradicate.
It's a trap we set for ourselves by being too serious.
It really is.
To dismantle this trap, we must actively inject joy into the learning process. We need to look at some practical, illustrative examples of how to achieve this, particularly for our audience learning English.
How do we make the effort feel lighter?
Well, for instance, instead of agonizing over a dry academic grammar textbook filled with abstract rules, you could print out the lyrics to your absolute favorite English pop song.
Okay, I love where this is going.
You take a red pen, you circle the idioms of vocabulary words you don't recognize, you look up the translations, and then you just stand in the shower and sing the song at the top of your lungs, desperately trying to mimic the singer's exact pronunciation and rhythm.
That physical and emotional shift completely alters the biochemical dynamic of learning.
So,
You are still executing the rigorous tasks of memorizing vocabulary and practicing complex phonetic pronunciation, but the vehicle delivering the learning is music.
And music makes us happy.
Exactly. Music inherently triggers the release of dopamine and endorphins. You are experiencing genuine aesthetic pleasure, and the language acquisition is simply hitching a free ride on that wave of joy.
So the affective filter is lowered, allowing the information to bypass the stress response and encode deeply into long-term memory.
Precisely.
Let me give you another brilliant example. If you love cinema, take your favorite short television series, one you have already watched and enjoy.
Like a sitcom.
Yeah, exactly. You turn on the English audio and the English subtitles. You transform the passive act of watching television into a highly interactive game of comprehension.
Oh, I see.
You hunt for small victories. Every time you recognize an idiom or understand a joke without having to pause and read the subtitle, you mentally score a point.
You are utilizing the psychological power of gamification. By hunting for micro-victories, you are constantly rewarding the brain's reward circuitry for moments of recognition rather than punishing it for the vast ocean of words it doesn't yet know.
You shift the focus from deficit to accumulation.
That makes intuitive sense, but consider the counter-argument.
Let's hear it.
I can hear the traditional academics and critics pushing back on this entire philosophy. Doesn't gamifying the process or prioritizing joy fundamentally lower the intellectual rigor of the learning?
The rigor argument.
Shouldn't we take education and self-improvement incredibly seriously? If a student is just singing pop songs in the shower and watching Netflix comedies, are they actually doing the grueling, difficult work required to achieve true mastery?
Doesn't excellence require discipline, suffering, and intense, unsmiling focus?
That is perhaps the most pervasive and damaging cultural myth regarding education.
Really?
Yes, we inherited this puritanical belief that if a process isn't actively painful, it cannot possibly be effective. But that is a sociological construct, not a biological reality.
So how do we prove that?
To understand why joy generates more rigorous outcomes than suffering, observe the behavior of a young child playing a highly complex strategic video game or building a massive structure out of blocks.
They are completely engaged.
That child is in a state of intense, unbroken focus. They are constantly testing hypotheses, failing, analyzing their failures, and instantly adapting your strategy.
They were completely absorbed in the task.
From a cognitive perspective, they are exhibiting immense intellectual rigor.
Okay, I see.
Now imagine an adult authority figure walking into the room, standing over that child and shouting, "Wipe that smile off your face. Take this block building seriously. Do it perfectly on the first try. Mistakes will not be tolerated."
Oh, wow. What happens to the child's cognitive state?
The child immediately freezes. The stress response spikes. The joy evaporates. And eventually, the child just drops the blocks and walks away from the game entirely. The desire to engage is destroyed.
Exactly. The adult's demand for serious, unyielding rigor actually assassinated the learning process.
The human brain, regardless of age, operates much like that child.
When you successfully bind a learning objective to an existing passion, whether that is music, narrative storytelling, sports, or a specific hobby, you make the exertion of effort virtually invisible.
You do not lower the rigor, you radically increase your psychological stamina.
You can maintain deep focus for longer durations, you retain complex information with greater fidelity, and crucially, you bounce back from inevitable mistakes much faster when your underlying emotional baseline is one of enjoyment rather than fear of failure.
Joy does not dilute the effort. Joy makes the effort sustainable over the long haul.
Joy makes the effort sustainable. That is a profound paradigm shift. It completely invalidates the idea that we have to suffer to learn.
It really does.
So let's review our architecture so far. We have constructed our highly specific tiny plan to bypass the amygdala's fear response.
Check.
We are vigilantly scanning for and spending our pocket time coins.
Check.
And we are deliberately injecting joy into the process so we don't abandon the mission. We have built a remarkably solid, highly functional system.
Good.
But there's a massive, highly sophisticated threat lurking just outside the walls of this system.
Oh, yes, there is.
It is a threat to our pocket time, a threat to our cognitive stamina, and it is currently residing right in the palms of our hands.
We must address the invaders. We have to talk about the time thieves.
This requires us to pivot from offense to defense. We must actively, aggressively defend our limited pocket time against entities that are designed to steal our attention without providing any reciprocal value.
And the undisputed apex predator of time theft in the modern era is the infinite, mindless scroll of social media.
We need to be incredibly clear-eyed about the nature of this threat, right?
We do. Social media platforms are not neutral tools. They are explicitly engineered time thieves.
The extraction of human attention is their sole underlying business model.
The algorithms governing these platforms are not accidents. They are meticulously crafted by thousands of brilliant behavioral psychologists and software engineers to exploit the vulnerabilities in your brain's dopamine system.
They are designed to capture and hold your gaze for the maximum possible duration.
And they are terrifyingly effective at it.
Let's break down the anatomy of a time theft. The classic trap happens to millions of people every single night.
Set the scene for us.
You are sitting on the edge of your bed. You are tired. You are ready to sleep. You pick up the phone and tell yourself, I am just going to quickly check one single message from my friend.
That is the fatal, final miscalculation of the waking day.
It really is. You open the application with the pure intention of reading that one specific message. But the interface is designed to ambush you.
It doesn't just show you the message.
No. Before you can even process the text, the algorithm dynamically serves up a highly engaging, emotionally evocative, auto-playing video right at the top of your screen.
Your visual cortex locks onto the movement.
You watch it. It's funny. But directly beneath the video, you notice a fiery argument erupting in the comment section.
Human beings are biologically wired to pay attention to social conflict, so you get sucked into reading the vitriolic exchange between strangers.
At this precise moment, your physiology is altering. Your heart rate is measurably elevating. Your adrenal glands are releasing mild stress hormones.
You're experiencing a genuine physiological stress response to a digital argument among anonymous people you will never meet and who have zero impact on your actual life.
And the rabbit hole goes deeper. For our learners, going down a rabbit hole means getting sucked into a situation that becomes increasingly complex or distracting.
Yes. Someone in that comment section posts a link to a highly sensationalized, outrage-inducing news story.
You click the link, you read the article, you become slightly angry, highly anxious about the state of the world, and mentally fragmented.
When you finally muster the willpower to force close the application, what is the net result?
Your brain is completely overwhelmed. It is vibrating with the chaotic soup of fragmented, low-quality input.
You haven't learned anything of value, you haven't improved your life, and most destructively, you have completely ruined your transition into restful sleep.
The time thief didn't merely steal 30 minutes of your evening. It actively looted your peace of mind and your cognitive stability.
To combat this highly asymmetric warfare, we must conceptualize the establishment of rigid boundaries. The strategic metaphor that best illustrates this defense mechanism is brilliantly simple: locking the door.
Explain the psychology behind locking the door, because I think people assume they have to completely delete every app and live like a monk to be productive.
No, that is a false dichotomy. Consider the physical security of your own home. When you walk up to your front door at night and turn the deadbolt to lock it, you are not performing that action, because you spend every waking hour of your day actively hating the concept of burglars.
Right. You don't sit in your living room obsessed with thieves.
You simply recognize an objective fact. The interior of your house contains items of value: your family, your possessions, your safety. Therefore, you take a basic, mechanical, unemotional step to protect those valuables. You turn the lock.
So you do not necessarily have to harbor a deep hatred for social media or entertainment apps. They have legitimate uses. They can facilitate connection. They can provide genuine amusement. But you must possess the self-awareness to recognize that your focused attention is the most valuable asset you own.
And you must deliberately lock the door to protect the interior of your mental house.
If locking the door is the metaphor, what are the actual mechanical deadbolts we can install in our daily routines? We need highly practical, actionable strategies for our listeners to defend their pocket time.
Locking the door manifests as the establishment of small, unbreakable physical and digital rules. For instance, creating physical distance.
How much distance?
When you sit down to execute your tiny plan, those sacred 10 minutes you promised yourself to study English, your smartphone must be physically located in a completely different room of your house.
Let's emphasize why physical distance is so crucial. If the phone is sitting on the desk right next to your textbook, even if it is turned face down on silent mode, it is still acting as a cognitive drain.
Yes. Studies show that your brain has to dedicate a measurable percentage of its background processing power simply to the act of ignoring the device.
It is a constant, subtle pull on your willpower.
Precisely. Out of sight literally means freeing up bandwidth in the mind.
Okay, what's the second mechanical lock?
Utilize the software against itself. Utilize the do not disturb functions built into every modern operating system to completely silence all non-essential, non-emergency notifications for a specific protected 1-hour block of your day.
Silence the pings, the buzzes, the visual banners.
Exactly. A third highly effective strategy relies on behavioral conditioning. You transform the time thief into a reward mechanism.
You establish a strict internal rule. I am absolutely forbidden from opening this social media application until after I have successfully completed my 10-minute tiny plan.
You are reclaiming your agency. You are dictating the terms of engagement rather than letting the software dictate them to you.
But I want to delve much deeper into the underlying neurobiology of being distracted.
Oh, let's do it.
Because the damage isn't just calculated in the loss of a 5-minute block of time. When we leave the door wide open and let the time thieves constantly interrupt us, when our attention is violently jumping from a text message to a work email to a flashing video clip, and then attempting to return to reading a complex article, what specific physiological damage are we inflicting on our brains?
We are inflicting what can be described as micro-traumas to our attention span through a process called rapid context switching.
Rapid context switching.
The human brain is not a parallel processor. It cannot focus on two complex tasks simultaneously. It's serial processes.
So what happens every time we switch?
Every single time your attention is yanked from one context, say, analyzing an English grammar rule, to a completely different context, say, reading a politically charged tweet, your brain must perform a complex neurological maneuver.
What's the maneuver?
It has to rapidly suppress the rules, vocabulary, and short-term memory associated with the grammar task, and instantly load up the emotional context, visual processing, and social rules required to understand the tweet.
It is like closing a massive software program on your computer and immediately opening another one over and over again.
Exactly. And that biological process of unloading and loading contexts requires a tremendous amount of measurable time, and more importantly, it actively burns through the limited supply of oxygenated glucose in your prefrontal cortex.
Wow. You are literally draining the chemical battery that powers your executive function simply by shifting your gaze back and forth between your book and your phone.
So when you reach the end of the day and you feel that profound, bone-deep mental exhaustion, it is often not because you engaged in deep, difficult, meaningful intellectual labor.
It is because you forced your brain to constantly, violently pivot between 100 different shallow contexts.
You suffer the fatigue of a marathon runner without having traveled a single mile.
That's a powerful way to put it.
By aggressively protecting your focus, by locking the door against the time thieves, you eliminate the immense biological friction of context switching.
This allows you to accomplish a significantly higher volume of high-quality cognitive work in a fraction of the time, leaving you with surplus energy at the end of the day.
And the downstream psychological effects of protecting that focus are truly profound.
When you successfully lock the door, eliminate the context switching, and actually complete your tiny plan without a single interruption, You grant yourself an incredible sense of control over your own destiny.
You transition from feeling like a helpless victim battered by the algorithm to feeling like the sovereign architect of your own daily experience.
That restoration of internal agency, the belief that your actions dictate your outcomes, is arguably the single most vital component for sustaining long-term mental health and emotional resilience in the digital age.
It is the foundation of confidence.
It really is. Now, as we transition into the final major phase of our discussion, I need to raise a giant red flag.
Uh-oh. Proceed with caution.
It would be incredibly easy for a listener to absorb everything we have discussed. The rigorous tiny plans, the ruthless harvesting of every spare minute of pocket time, the aggressive locking out of time thieves, and draw a dangerous conclusion.
What conclusion?
They might assume that the ultimate underlying goal of this entire methodology is to transform them into a relentless, nonstop, hyper-efficient productivity machine, a cyborg who never wastes a single breath or a single heartbeat.
Oh, if anyone walks away with that conclusion, it would represent a catastrophic misinterpretation of the physiological reality we are trying to describe.
I am so glad you said that, because if we travel down that path of endless optimization, we collide with the most crucial foundational realization about time management.
Yes.
And this is a concept we need to emphasize with maximum intensity. If you are taking notes, write this down in bold letters. Genuine rest is not a waste of time.
I will reiterate that because it stands in direct, aggressive opposition to modern hustle culture, which falsely preaches that sleep is for the weak. Genuine, restorative rest is not a waste of time.
You do not need to be working, studying, advancing, or optimizing yourself during every single waking minute of your existence.
We can use a very common metaphor here, the smartphone battery. It's a bit simple, but let's start there.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you use your smartphone continuously all day long, you are running heavy navigation apps, making video calls, streaming high-definition movies, and you stubbornly refuse to ever plug it into a power source. The inevitable happens.
The battery depletes entirely, the screen goes black, the device transforms from a miraculous tool of communication into an expensive, utterly useless paperweight of glass and metal.
Right. And the human organism operates on a strikingly similar, albeit vastly more complex, energy dynamic.
We possess a biological and cognitive battery. It continuously drains when we engage in focused work, when we solve problems, when we navigate traffic, and even when we engage in highly stimulating social interactions.
Deep, uninterrupted sleep, and periods of genuine, quiet, unstructured waking rest. These are the essential charging mechanisms for our mental and physical batteries.
But the smartphone metaphor is almost too simplistic, because a phone is entirely passive when it charges. To truly elevate this concept, we need to examine what actually occurs inside the human brain during periods of deep rest.
It is not a passive shutdown. It is a highly active, critical biological mechanism. Have you ever explored the mechanics of the glymphatic system?
Break that down for us. What is the glymphatic system doing while we think we are just doing nothing?
During your waking hours, as your neurons continuously fire to process information, they produce toxic metabolic byproducts, essentially biological waste proteins that build up in the brain tissue.
If these proteins accumulate, they severely impair cognitive function, memory consolidation, and focus.
This is why you feel brain fog after a long day.
So what happens when we rest?
When you finally surrender to deep sleep, or even states of profound, quiet relaxation, an astonishing biological process initiates. The actual cellular structure of your brain slightly shrinks, opening up pathways.
The brain shrinks.
Just a little. Cerebrospinal fluid rushes through these widened channels, physically washing away the toxic proteins and clearing the neural pathways.
So rest isn't just turning the machine off. It is an active, aggressive biological cleaning cycle.
Exactly. If you refuse to plug yourself in, if you refuse to rest because you hold a toxic belief that sleeping is wasting time, you are literally allowing toxic waste to accumulate in your neural circuitry.
You will inevitably experience a cognitive crash.
You guarantee biological failure. Let's look at an anecdote that perfectly illustrates the disastrous consequences of the anti-rest mindset.
Oh, this ought to be good.
Imagine a classic scenario of false productivity. You are facing a tight deadline on a major project. It is 11:00 p.m. You are experiencing deep, bone-crushing exhaustion. Your eyes are burning.
But your anxiety tells you, I cannot afford to waste time sleeping. I must push through and finish this document tonight.
The classic burning the midnight oil scenario, we've all done it.
So you force yourself to stay awake. You spend 2 agonizing hours staring at the monitor.
Because your prefrontal cortex is depleted of glucose and your lymphatic system hasn't cleared the metabolic waste, your cognitive processing speed is abysmal.
You produce work that is, frankly, incoherent. You make typographical errors, you lose your train of thought, you delete entire paragraphs, and you rewrite them poorly.
It is the absolute definition of diminishing marginal returns.
You are expending maximum effort for minimum output, and then finally at 1:00 a.m., out of sheer biological necessity, you collapse into bed.
The next morning, you wake up, your battery is relatively recharged, the toxic proteins have been cleared.
You sit down at your desk, you look at the chaotic, messy work you produced the night before, and you instantly realize it is unusable.
You delete the entire 2 hours of work, and because your brain is now functioning optimally, you redo the exact same task from scratch in just 30 crisp, efficient minutes.
And the quality of the new work is vastly superior.
This scenario exposes the profound, tragic irony of the anti-rest philosophy.
By desperately trying not to waste time by working late into the night, you actively created a situation where you wasted 2 entire hours of your life producing unusable garbage, and you simultaneously sabotaged your sleep architecture for the night.
Consider the alternative timeline. If, at 11:00 p.m., you had simply surrendered to your biology, closed the laptop, and gone to sleep, you would have actually saved time.
Genuine rest is not a retreat from productivity. It is a highly strategic maneuver.
It is a productivity multiplier. It structurally prepares your neurology to execute tasks with vastly higher efficiency in the future.
That is a massive paradigm shift, reframing rest as a strategic necessity rather than a moral failing.
So how do we conceptualize balance within this framework? Because balance is a tricky word. People often think balance means a perfectly static pie chart where work, sleep, and fun each get exactly 33% of the day.
That static definition of balance is an illusion. True balance is highly dynamic. It resembles a complex, shifting biological ecosystem.
A healthy ecosystem requires periods of intense, focused work, periods of deliberate study, moments of genuine, unrestrained fun, and phases of deep, restorative rest.
If you systematically remove any one of those pillars, the entire psychological structure becomes brittle and eventually collapses.
When we emphasize the goal of not wasting time, we are specifically referring to preventing time from leaking out unintentionally into the digital void.
If you consciously decide to sit on your back porch with a cup of tea and stare silently at the trees for 30 minutes because you recognize your nervous system requires regulation, that is an incredibly productive, necessary use of your time.
That conscious regulation is the definition of balance.
I love that distinction. Unintentional leaking versus conscious, deliberate resting. They look the same on the surface. You aren't producing anything in either scenario, but the internal neurochemistry and the long-term results are completely opposite.
Okay, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground.
We've explored the thermodynamics of poured water, the cognitive mapping of the tiny plan, the temporal discounting of pocket time, the dopamine mechanisms of joy, the micro-traumas of time thieves, and the lymphatic cleaning cycle of rest.
To synthesize all these complex philosophies into something the listener can immediately use, we need an actionable framework.
We must transition from theory to execution. Let's outline the lexicon of efficiency and the 4-step action framework.
Before we detail the 4 specific steps, let's briefly review the essential mindset shifts using 3 key vocabulary words that form the bedrock of this entire philosophy.
What's the first word?
The first foundational word is intentional. This represents the shift from a state of passive reaction to a state of active agency.
It means executing actions deliberately, on purpose,
Yep.
not by accident or algorithmic manipulation.
You dictate precisely where the water from your bottle is poured. You do not passively let it spill onto the floor.
The second core concept is the vital shift from vague to clear.
This requires ruthlessly abandoning ambitious but ambiguous goals like, I will get better at my job this year, which triggered the amygdala's threat response.
You replace them with precise GPS-style coordinates. A clear goal is, I will read one highly specific technical article about my industry during my lunch break today.
And the third foundational concept is invest.
Invest. This involves applying a long-term financial mindset to the asset of time.
It requires overcoming our evolutionary bias toward immediate gratification. It is the deep understanding that utilizing 10 minutes of pocket time today to review vocabulary is not a painful sacrifice of your freedom.
It is a calculated investment designed to purchase a much larger, more profound capability in the future.
Intentional, clear, invest. If you keep those 3 words at the forefront of your mind, you are ready for the exact 4-step action plan.
This is what you, the listener, can physically do the moment this podcast ends.
Step 1. Define one tiny goal for today. Just a single objective.
And you must engineer it to be almost laughably small. Lower the barrier to entry so drastically that your brain cannot possibly muster any emotional resistance. I will learn 2 new English words.
Step 2. Determine exactly when and where you will execute the plan. Identify a specific recurring pocket of time in your existing daily routine.
Do not rely on the vague promise of, I'll do it sometime later tonight. Anchor it to a physical event. Say, I will review those 2 words during the exact 4 minutes I am standing in the kitchen waiting for the coffee machine to finish brewing.
Step 3. Systematically inject an element of joy into the process. Connect the required effort to a stimulus you already find pleasurable.
Listen to your favorite instrumental music while you do it. Utilize the gamification of a well-designed app, or focus your learning on a topic you are already deeply passionate about.
Ensure your nervous system is perceiving the activity as a form of play rather than a punitive threat.
And finally, step 4. And I really want us to unpack the psychology of this step, because it is arguably the most critical, yet it is the step almost every highly ambitious person skips entirely.
Step 4. You must consciously say something kind to yourself immediately after completing the task.
The omission of this step is why so many people fail to build lasting habits.
It is because we are culturally conditioned to operate as our own most vicious critics.
If we set a grand goal and we inevitably stumble, we verbally flagellate ourselves.
Yeah.
Our internal monologue becomes incredibly toxic. You are so lazy, you wasted time again, you have 0 discipline, you are never going to achieve fluency.
We operate under the delusion that being exceptionally cruel to ourselves will somehow forge the motivation to perform better the next time.
But neurobiologically, intense self-criticism achieves the exact opposite result. When you operate as your own internal enemy, you generate massive amounts of stress and toxic shame.
And as we established earlier when discussing the affective filter, how does the brain respond to a massive influx of stress?
It seeks immediate, low-friction escape.
By mercilessly beating yourself up for wasting time, you actually increase the probability that you will seek out mindless, dopamine-spiking distractions to soothe the emotional pain you just inflicted upon yourself.
It is a catastrophic, self-defeating feedback loop.
So to break the loop, you have to transition from being your own enemy to becoming your own coach.
For our English learners, the idiom "cut yourself some slack" is perfect. Here it means to not judge yourself so harshly.
Exactly. Visualize the behavior of an elite sports coach. A world-class coach does not scream in the face of an athlete for missing a difficult shot during practice. That would destroy their confidence.
Instead, a great coach celebrates the attempt, analyzes the mechanics of the failure objectively, and adjusts the strategy for the next shot.
When you successfully complete your 5-minute tiny plan, you must deliberately pause, take a breath, and consciously tell yourself, "Good job. I made a commitment to study for 5 minutes, and I honored that commitment. I am proud of that execution."
I know a lot of people hear that and think, that feels ridiculous. I am an adult. I am not going to congratulate myself for reading 2 flashcards. It feels fluffy and childish.
But it is not about the magnitude of the specific task. It is about reinforcing a new psychological identity.
It has absolutely nothing to do with fluffy self-esteem. It is hard neuroscience.
By pausing to acknowledge the victory, you are deliberately triggering a release of dopamine, the molecule of reward and motivation in response to completing the task.
You are chemically wiring your brain to associate the act of studying with pleasure. This guarantees that your brain will crave that same activity tomorrow.
Operating as your own compassionate coach is not a sign of emotional weakness. It is a highly calculated, neurologically sound habit retention strategy.
That is a profoundly empowering realization. You don't have to fight a perpetual war against your own mind. You can literally coach your neurochemistry into consistency.
Which brings us to the grand synthesis of our deep dive today.
We have journeyed through a vast landscape of ideas, from the thermodynamics of poured water and the architecture of tiny plans, to finding loose change in the couch cushions and washing toxic proteins out of the brain.
Let's distill all of this into the ultimate takeaway. Your time on this earth is an incredibly valuable, strictly finite resource.
But to utilize it effectively, you do not need to demand perfection from yourself. You do not need an immaculate, color-coded daily schedule. You do not need to banish all forms of digital entertainment from your life, and you certainly do not need to work yourself to the point of biological collapse.
The entire system hinges on a very small pivot. All you truly need to do is capture and invest just 10 intentional minutes a day.
Utilize the GPS methodology. Make your goals so microscopically tiny and hyper-specific that your amygdala cannot possibly mount a defense against them.
Stop throwing your small coins in the trash and begin aggressively harvesting that pocket time while you're waiting for the bus, standing in line, or waiting for water to boil.
Remain vigilant against the algorithms. Actively lock the door against the time thieves to protect your prefrontal cortex from the devastating micro-traumas of constant context switching.
And perhaps most importantly, completely eradicate the guilt associated with rest. Never apologize for plugging yourself in and allowing your glymphatic system to wash away the stress of the day.
Unstructured rest is a foundational pillar of a high-functioning, joyful human life.
Before we conclude, I think it is highly appropriate to acknowledge you, the listener, directly.
Yes, simply by choosing to press play on this episode, by dedicating your focus to this complex English conversation, you have flawlessly executed the exact methodology we have spent the last hour describing.
That is a brilliant point. You absolutely did not pour your water on the floor today.
You could have spent the last hour tumbling down a rabbit hole of outrage-inducing news articles or mindlessly scrolling past thousands of short videos.
But instead, you made a highly intentional choice. You gathered your pocket time, you locked the door against distractions, and you invested this hour directly into your own intellectual growth and your English fluency.
That is a massive, tangible victory. You should step into the role of your own coach right now, take a breath, and genuinely acknowledge that accomplishment.
It is the ultimate real-world demonstration of intentionality in action.
It truly is. So as we bring this episode of Learn English at Ease to a close, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought experiment to turn over in your mind as you step back into your daily routine.
We have discussed the staggering mathematics of pocket time and how those seemingly insignificant 5-minute increments compound into massive results over time.
The inescapable law of compounding interest applied to human cognition.
Exactly. So here's my final challenge to you. I want you to mentally audit your schedule for tomorrow.
Really visualize the physical spaces you will move through and the transitions in your typical day. Where are the hidden small coins of pocket time that you currently throw away without a second thought?
The 3 minutes waiting in the drive-thru, the 5 minutes before a video call begins, the quiet moment while the microwave is running. Find them. Identify them.
And then ask yourself this one profound question. If, starting tomorrow morning, you begin treating those tiny 5-minute gaps not as disposable trash, but as cold, hard, incredibly valuable currency, What kind of skills, what kind of intellect, and what kind of life could you afford to buy a year from now?
That is a question that demands and deserves a very thoughtful answer.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. Please leave a comment below with your thoughts on today's topic. We would love to know how you plan to spend your pocket time tomorrow.
And be sure to check out our next episode to keep learning and growing with us. Keep practicing, stay intentional, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone, and take care.